So, a little bit more about writing our stories, continuing that what could possibly go wrong story. In our last video, we looked at the writing style and things that we needed to include all the way through our story. Talked about writing in the first person, talked about using descriptive language and similes and metaphors, and we talked about using lots of different styles of sentences. We know all that now. So, the next thing to think about is getting a plan in place. This is going to be a nice long piece of writing. If you just set off straight into the unknown, it can be really difficult to keep going. I know that works for some of you. For others of you, a really strong plan is what's going to get us through. We need to think about our story having a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the beginning of your story, what you would normally do is introduce the characters and the settings. Now, a lot of that has already been done for you. We already know that it's a brilliant summer's day. We know that they're going to the zoo. We know they've got their mum and dad with them. We've already got an idea of characters and setting. So make sure when you're writing it, you continue to build on that. What normally happens at the beginning of the story is you get a sense of everything being normal, and you start to write about things being normal, but with a sense that that is going to change soon. So maybe the first thing to do is just getting to the zoo and everything being okay. Maybe. You might have different ideas, and that's fine. And then, at the end of your beginning, as you move into your middle, you need to introduce into your story the problem. And that problem is how you transition from the beginning of your story to the middle part of your story. I'm sure you've got lots of ideas as to what that problem could be. If it were me, I'd be thinking about those chimps. Chimps were mentioned in the beginning paragraph. I think chimps are fundamentally funny animals. Maybe that's just me. I think if I was thinking of a problem, I would go for something to do with the chimps. You might go, no, not interested in chimps. My problem is going to be about aliens. But this is where your what could possibly go wrong bit happens. This is where it goes wrong. In the middle of our story, you describe in a bit more detail what that problem looks like. And you start to work out how that affects your characters and what they're going to do about it. So, we're going to describe the problem. And describe people's actions as well, describe what people do because there's a problem. And that leads us on really nicely towards the end of the story. The end of the story is typically the problem being solved. And so to get from the middle to the end, you need the solution. You describe the actions that the characters in your story take to solve the problem or get away from the situation, or whatever solving the problem looks like. And then at the end of your story, you like to think about linking back in to the beginning. It needs to be really clear that what happened throughout this story was happening to one set of characters. If you end up at the end, somewhere completely unrelated to the beginning, you've not really got much flow. So I like to make sure at the end of the story I mention some of the things that happened at the beginning. Link to the beginning. And what that usually means is that everything goes back to normal, or kind of normal. The best story is it's not completely back to normal, it's kind of normal. So, that gives us our structure. Our beginning, middle, and our end, linking back to the beginning to give the story some flow. Writing down a structure like this helps me. And then I would also write next to each point that I've made what that's going to look like. So I said that my problem was going to be something to do with the chimps. So I'd write here, problem, and I'd come off it and go, all the chimps escape. When I got to my solution, I'd write next to it, what was the solution? They got some really attractive chimps to go into the chimp cage and do a dance and then attract all of the other chimps back into the cage. That's how we're going to solve it. And I would write those things down. Next to everything, I would write what it was going to look like in my story. And then as I was going through, I would tick them off. Yes, I've introduced the characters. Yes, I've introduced the setting. Yes, I've described it being normal. Yes, I've described the problem. And as I went along, I would tick them off, and then I would know where my story was going. And I'd be making sure when I did all of that, I was still following that author style like we talked about in the last video. Please send me your stories. I really, really want to hear them. Remember, when you've written it, you're not done. You need to go back, read it through, check it makes sense, check it's punctuated beautifully, and then send it to me. Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye!